You know, I've been curious, why is it that the border situation in the United States is not a bigger deal? I mean, this is probably one of those things where I kind of feel like it's an information campaign where they slowly warm you up to the fact that we just have an insecure border and it's okay for people to cross it every now and then. But then the situation progressively worsens and we become more and more and more desensitized to it as time goes by, and the problem just continues to escalate and escalate and escalate. Well, friends, we are under an invasion, and I think it's a coordinated invasion. And I want to ask a few questions of you guys about what you think is going on down there, and give you a few updates as to what I've seen going on and why I think that there's something more to this border invasion than what we're being told, and why legacy media is not covering it. I was recently watching a video with Tim Ballard from The Sound of Freedom. He was the agent who helped create the film, The Sound of Freedom. It was on him. I haven't watched it, so I don't know entirely too much about that film. We only get certain streaming services at our house, and we just don't we don't let our kids watch a lot of mainstream media. I mean, Disney, all those things these days have all kind of been tainted with messages that we want to protect our kids from. So we just don't allow it in our household, really. I do follow the news, but I do most of my news following by reading and gathering information that way. And I like that because there's less distraction. I can get straight to the point. But anyway, I was watching an interview of Tim Ballard in front of Congress. That's another good way to watch news, C-SPAN, if you want to deal with that junk. But anyway, what he said to Congress was rather fascinating. He played a clip from the movie where he had just stopped somebody at the border and they found a child inside. And he explained to Congress the only reason why they were able to make that particular bust happen was because the human trafficker moving the child had to go through a port instead of around, because the border was barricaded.
This scene depicts a moment from my real life I'll never forget. I was working for the Department of Homeland Security out of Calexico, California, and I can tell you firsthand that the only reason we were able to save this precious little boy was due to the fact that they had to take him across the border at a port of entry checkpoint because the border walls compelled them to do so. The horrors a child faces as a victim of human trafficking demand that we take action. A child can be sold up to 20 times a day, 6 days a week, for 10 years or even longer, depending when the abuse began. Just in 2022 alone, immigration authorities encountered more than 152,000 unaccompanied minors at or near the US-Mexico border, representing an all-time high.
So, you know, we were trying to build a wall down there not too long ago before those efforts got disrupted. And I'll get to that in a second. But the point is that what he was saying is the only way to stop human trafficking across the U.S. border, which the U.S. is one of the largest economies for human trafficking in the world. It's got the most money, got the most resources. So there, you know, the border is used on a regular basis for human trafficking. He was like, the only way to stop that is to have a physical barrier, so that there's no other way than to go through the ports, have to go through border security. And that makes a lot of sense to me. You know, it bothers me. We have this situation going on down at the southern border. I've traveled to Canada numerous times this year, and it's actually a lot easier to go into Canada than it is to come back in the U.S. I mean, border security up there is pretty tight. They took my apples. You know, what bothers me is as a U.S. citizen handing them a passport, and I understand that people traffic all sorts of things across borders and you have to check them out, but they go through our stuff, they take our apples, they take our raw meats, all the things that you would think are pretty harmless. But then you go down to the southern border and we've got thousands of people just coming illegally across every single day. What's the deal with this? I don't understand what the big deal is about having a secure border with some sort of wall, to be honest with you, especially with what we're seeing right now. And I get the argument that some people have that it restricts the flow of wildlife through corridors, and I understand that, but you can have specific wildlife corridors with you know, active guards there. I mean, they can be nonchalant for the wildlife, so the wildlife can pass through as long as there's some sort of monitoring where those corridors are. But leaving the entire border open doesn't work. And we know that wildlife corridors, they work. They work all over the place, and we've seen them implemented very effectively. But everything that we see at the border tends to get negative publicity, whether it's a wall because it might block wildlife corridors, whether it's razor wire because it's inhumane. So the Biden administration went out and cut down a bunch of razor wire that was put up by Texas. And the next thing you know, you have thousands of people coming through the area that they cut down the razor wire, and the state of Texas had to go up and rebuild the razor wire. So that we get this negative publicity about blocking the border. But where's the publicity on what's actually coming across the border? Where is that? Because that's what I'm more interested in. I want to know who's coming across that border illegally. The other day, there were photos, and this really kind of just tipped me over the edge a little bit. There were photos of some Border Patrol agents covered in blood. Some of it was their blood. It looked like, and I'm not going to show this picture, it looked like somebody had gotten shot in the arm or stabbed in the arm, one thing or the other, arresting a human trafficker who was a cartel member. We know he was a cartel member. He had RATA tattooed across his forehead, which means rat. So this guy was probably paying a price with the cartels. It took 6 officers to take this guy down. I mean, these are dangerous people, and the cartels right now, they're pretty much running Mexico. I mean, there was a massive gun shoot just a couple weeks ago, and we've heard about that poor rancher down in Texas who was arrested and put on trial because some illegal immigrants, we rephrase that, illegal migrants or whatever you want to call them, they were cartel members coming onto his land carrying guns. One of the guys shot was a cartel member. We know that. This rancher is being put on trial for protecting his land. This shouldn't be happening in America. This situation is literally out of control to the point where Texas has declared an invasion.
Governor Greg Abbott is vowing to send more state personnel to the border to fight what he's calling an invasion.
It comes as more Texas border communities have seen a surge in migrants in the past couple of weeks. KVUE's Darren Shaharan spoke with an expert about what all of this means.
Now, Brian Quita, Governor Greg Abbott posted this video on social media tonight of what he says is the feds cutting down the state's razor wire in Eagle Pass. After seeing that video, he says he deployed more Texas National Guard troops to, quote, repel illegal crossings and install more razor wire, end quote. This all comes as the Biden administration and Governor Abbott are in a legal battle over the state's enforcement efforts, including a floating border barrier in the Rio Grande.
I'm surprised the United States has not declared an invasion, and I don't understand why. I'm hoping from your comments down below, you guys can help me understand why. Why aren't we doing more to stop this invasion of our border? And it seems coordinated. Here's the thing is, there are freight trains. There are freight trains carrying thousands of migrants to our border. How is that not coordinated? How do you have an entire train coming filled with migrants to the U.S. border, dropping them off, and then you've got thousands of migrants coming across the border to the point where Border Patrol is overwhelmed, and there's no possible way they could stop everybody from coming across the border.
In terms of flow and the threats that we're seeing with fentanyl and with the criminal organizations that are our adversary, it's about as bad as I've ever seen it.
How sustainable is this, your ability to respond to this amount of people at the border?
This isn't sustainable. This is up and down the system. Everybody is overwhelmed, even the government of Mexico, which have been great partners for us. The U.S. Border Patrol, a lot of times our facilities are already over capacity.
You know, these Border Patrol agents are out there, you saw the pictures, they're out there sacrificing their lives, they're sacrificing their time. A lot of them are working overtime. I knew somebody who used to work on the border as a Texas Ranger, and he said it was the most horrible job on earth. He likes working he's still a Texas Ranger, but the point is that they're getting frustrated with what's happening because what they see is that they're being asked to do something, and then behind their backs, people are getting released, people are, fence lines are getting cut down.
We stay focused, we continue to do the job and the mission that we signed up for. Right, we all signed up for it, we all raised our hand.
To defend the Constitution, not the
It's not hard to say it. It may be hard for you to say it, but I've been doing this for 31 years. It's not hard for me to say it. Every day I wake up and I'm committed to this organization and I'm committed to each one of y'all.
You say the same thing, but it seems like the policies. But then you keep releasing criminal aliens in the country.
You're getting bogged down in the policies and the politics.
You can't say illegal alien.
What's that?
That's why Chief Scott left.
You just said it.
You can't
See
say
anything gonna happen to you? You just said it.
the whole generation.
Why are you guys getting caught up in semantics? Right? There's a mission out there to be. There's a mission out there to be had, guys. We can sit here and argue about it till we're blue in the face. Right? I've been doing this job as long as y'all.
That's the problem.
What's that?
That's the problem, Chief. For evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. That's
I can't hear you.
what's happening. For evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. That's exactly what's happening here. Good men are doing nothing. You're allowing illegal aliens to be dropped off in communities.
You are doing something.
No, sir, we're not.
You are.
No,
You're rescuing people every day. You're taking fentanyl off the streets every day. You're taking methamphetamine
Yes, and under this
criminal
administration,
aliens
for the
off the
last
streets
year, we
every
got the
day.
highest fentanyl death in the history of our country. In 1 year, in this country.
You know, we've made more fentanyl seizures already this year than we made last year.
How many have we not catch because we're focusing on this family?
I don't know.
And that's the problem.
And we're working on it.
Well, where's the results? We don't have results.
To me, this has to be a coordinated attack on the United States. And I don't know where it's coming from. What I do know is we're spending billions of dollars fighting a war 6,000 miles away, and we've actually got a war down on our border. This is, by all accounts, in my opinion, an invasion of the US border. And I am somebody who's always been 100% in favor of people coming to the United States legally and starting lives. I mean, come on. All of us should be. All of our grandparents or great-grandparents, somewhere down the line, we had people come to the United States. And what's interesting is that those who have this open border mentality are the first ones to criticize colonization and people coming here in the first place. So what is actually going on? Why are we allowing this to happen? Why do we have these open border policies? I mean, what can be done to actually end the situation down at the border? It seems like they have to have, in order for this much coordination to send that many people to the border all at once. I mean, we just had 11,000 cross the other day. That was the highest ever on record.
What do you call it here at the White House when 10,000 people illegally cross the border in a single day?
So what do you call it, Peter, when GOP puts forth a wait, no, you can't.
Sorry?
I'm answering, okay, we're gonna move
You're
on.
answering the question with a question? Okay.
No, we're moving on.
Great,
Moving.
please.
In the back,
Now, you said you were stopping the flow at the border.
No, I
10,000
tried to
migrants.
answer, Peter, I
Okay.
tried to answer the question, you stopped me. Let's go. Gotcha.
This is what I'm talking about. The desensitization from 1,000 people, 2,000 people to 11,000 people a day. You've just kind of gotten used to hearing these numbers. You're not actually seeing the escalation that's going on. And most of these people, aren't, women and children and families that you hear about. A lot of the migrants coming across the border are men. There is something very, very odd, in my opinion, about what's going on. I've heard a lot of people say, well, it's, to flood the Democratic cities with votes. And I have no doubt that some of those cities are going to have a hard time staying in power without having some sort of outside vote. And there's some truth to that. While illegal immigrants cannot vote in a federal election, or they shouldn't be, they could be prosecuted and go to jail. Of course, you'd have to prosecute people for illegally voting in an election to even find people who have voted illegally, which we haven't. Well, we're just not that kind of country, right? We don't question those types of things. But they can legally vote in state and local elections. There's only about 5 or 6 states that actually don't allow illegal immigrants to vote in elections. At any given moment in time, the numbers used to be around 25 million illegal immigrants that lived in the United States. And a lot of those immigrants, millions of them, have voting rights on the state and local levels, because it's not in their constitutions to say that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote. And some of those states and cities and localities welcome the vote of illegal immigrants. And if somebody moves to our country legally, becomes a legal resident of the country, has gone through the education process of how our constitutional republic works, what it means to be a voter, by all means, let them vote. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is people hopping the border and then having the right to vote in certain areas. And it just seems odd that they're inundating places like Texas. I don't think, though, that the voting is the only thing going on here. I think that there's something that is much more effective happening with all these migrants coming across the border. I just can't put my finger on it. Human trafficking is definitely a big deal. And we know that there's a lot of human trafficking along the U.S. southern border. And I don't know how you stop that other than protecting the border. But why would somebody, when you ask the question, why aren't we doing more to protect the border? It makes you wonder, are there that many people that are supportive of human trafficking? And who's making a profit off of human trafficking? Where does that money go? I would be willing to bet that if we traced some of that money, we'd be able to find some open border supporters in there that are basically funding the opposition to shutting down our borders. But at this point in time, it seems like this is a much larger coordinated attack. And I don't know that we can just pinpoint it on voting or human trafficking as the source. I feel like this is much bigger than that.
So you believe what's happening in Eagle Pass is directly a distraction to occupy your time instead of looking at something else?
I believe it's a money-making opportunity for those smugglers, and I believe it's a distraction for them to cross other things into the country.
Other things like?
Narcotics, fentanyl, bulk cash, weapons, people of interest, whether it be hardened criminals, gang members, convicted sexual predators.
And if you look across the world, migration issues aren't just here in the U.S., but they're in other Western countries, including Europe. And so that makes you wonder, is there a much larger coordinated effort? And what are their end goals? What's their end game? Is it to just disrupt the society? I mean, obviously it's been disruptive even in places like New York City. It's very, very disruptive. And it's gotten to the point where it literally is out of control. It's out of hand. There's no way that we can just overnight go down there and stop what's happening at the border. But something has to be done, in my perspective. Something has to be done, and we need to figure out how this coordination is happening, who's funding these things, and how to put an end to that. Because that's the real, in my opinion, that's the real border problem.
We're still facing removal and deportation, so it is not this open gate that the smugglers are promising.
But that's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying.
And it's not just here. That's the thing. This is not just in the United States. It's happening all over the world in the free countries. But if we can figure it out, I think that will help solve a lot of our border problems. And not only solve it, but maybe, have better policies for allowing people to migrate to the United States legally. But until we figure out a way to solve that before we get to the root of it, we're going to continue to face these challenges. But this has gotten too big. It's too big, too coordinated, and I don't think that these people are just fleeing their countries. It's not what we picture when we hear it from legacy media. These aren't just, a bunch of women and children and families coming over, or children being separated from their families. In a lot of cases, there are a lot of children and a lot of men. Of course, there's also a lot of human trafficking. But there's something fishy going on at the U.S. border. And for whatever reason, our current administration doesn't want to address it.
What do you call it here at the White House when 10,000 people illegally cross the border in a single day?
So what do you call it, Peter, when GOP puts forth wait, no, you can't. I'm answering. Okay, we're gonna move on. No, we're moving on.
Great,
please. In the back.
You said you were stopping the flow at the border.
No. I tried to answer, Peter. I tried to answer the question. You stopped me. Let's go.
For some reason, they're remaining silent on the issue. I will say that they did recently send 800,000 agents to the border. 400,000 are replacements, so they're gonna bump it up by 400,000. But again, what is their end game? Are they trying to just kind of detain people for a period of time and then release them? Because that's what's been happening. That's not actually securing the border, and I'm not sure that they're able to vet all of those people properly. I mean, I don't know, but I feel like it's a coordinated attack. I feel like it is an actual invasion of our country that is happening right now, and it is mind-boggling to me that more people aren't concerned about it. It's mind-boggling to me that our own administration isn't doing more to prevent it. But what I do know is that something needs to be done to protect this country and to stop what is, in actuality, an invasion.